Jazzcast Pros.
Hi, I'm Kelly.
And I'm Kelly,
the host of Getting Real with Bossy, the real, raw, and honest podcast about small business ownership. With our experience, 9 businesses in over 25 years, we continue to bear it all and share what we wish we had known.
We move past the must be nices and start getting real.
Leave with another tool for the next time you feel alone on this journey. And joining us today, Rosa Marie.
Our breath of fresh air.
Yes, y'all may remember Rosa from earlier in our podcast journey, and we are so excited for this catch up today. But I just made Kelly start recording because we were all kind of chatting, and we are like the perfect trio for the day, I think, because I am middle of the road. Rosa, you started off by saying hi, and how are you feeling today?
Happy and hopeful.
I love it.
Me too.
Kelly Bush is over here rolling on some lavender and sticking it up her nose, hoping that things get better. Bring the peace, lavender. Bring the peace.
I am having a day. I feel like that phrase gets overused, but man, I'm having a day. But I'll tell you, I'm excited for this because you were one of our very, very first few episodes, and
we were still recording on a phone.
We were still recording on a phone.
And are you the only one we've ever drank with?
Yes, I was going to say that too.
What?
Never.
I don't think we've drank because we stopped doing them in person.
Oh, wow.
And we stopped doing them in the evening. So we do most of them before noon. So I think that's part of it too.
Well, that's good because you catch entrepreneurs before the day gets really far away from us. Like, we know how often we set our day, like, okay, I need to get this done, this done, this done. And by 2:00, you're like, I got one thing or nothing at all.
Yep.
And it's just downhill from there. So,
right.
Yeah.
And honestly, we picked this time because it gives us time, and we know it gives you time to get some of the important stuff out of the way before you sit down with us. So you're not like backed up with all the things that you've got on your mind, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you take the morning, you get your stuff done. It's not lunchtime yet. So like there's something to look forward to. We can eat afterwards.
Right.
And then get on your day before you realize that it's gone to shit.
Exactly. Exactly.
So Rosa, you are my favorite story of growth. Because I'm not using that other word. I decided today that we are only going to talk about growth because when I first met you, and for those of you that heard the podcast before, you were like a guerrilla daycare service. Like, we were talking about guerrilla marketing before we started recording. You were out there doing the work. You had an amazing program going on, and you were doing things. And I just met you, and I was like, oh my God. And it was before the pandemic. So it was like, I have so many people I know that need your services.
Right.
And then you got yourself a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
So you grew and your program continued to grow. And then the pandemic hit right as your opening date came. I think the pandemic hit like a week before you were opening your doors.
Yeah, that's about right.
And then you grew amazingly throughout the pandemic in so many different ways. And society keeps changing, and I think that people don't appreciate the effect of the pandemic that's still going on, and it hasn't ended yet. It hasn't leveled out. Everything is still changing so much, and people talk about the economy, and they talk about societal changes, and you hear the election stuff being talked about all the time, but nobody talks about it in that frame of reference, and I think small business owners are very aware that things are still changing and we are still growing to grow out of this portion of our business. So we're here today to hear how Marvelous Minds is continuing to grow and what you are currently up to.
Well, and I think before you get started, Rose, I think we talk about retail and the continual growing. I guess we're using this now. But people I don't think people always understand like childcare, daycare, all of it. Everything has changed. People work different now. They're spending money. We talk about that with retail and what Kelly and I do all the time, but people work differently. People have different needs for what you do. And I think it's so important and not talked about enough. So I think this is incredibly timely.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Where do we start with the growth? I think for me as an entrepreneur, the growth that happens first internally for me, always, before anybody ever actually gets to see the fruition of the personal growth and development that happens inside of my body and my life. For me, I know Marvelous Mind Academy is definitely the catalyst for my personal development. I've been at this for 10 years, right? And I've gotten really creative at how to give myself grace, because we are our own worst critics, okay? And it has been extremely challenging and hopeful at the same time, because opportunity and what's the other word I'm thinking of? It's not opposition, but when you're having these challenges, it's an O word and they go together. It's just been extremely, extremely, I don't know how to describe it. Whether I want to say it's fun to watch, or it's annoying to watch, or it's problematic, but it is what it is. I don't know where to start when it comes to all the changes that has happened, even from the last time we talked, right? The last time we talked, yes, we were meeting in person. The last time we talked, we were getting ready to roll out, I'm sure, another program. 10 years in business, 4 years as a brick and mortar, 4. And I have to remember that in order to give myself grace. When we talk about child development, we talk about aging, we talk about that. So the creativity comes from this, okay? Because I get really frustrated with myself when things aren't happening as quickly as I think they should. So I'm 35 years young, okay? But watch this creative math and how I give myself grace every time I have to level up and learn something new. I'm 35, but technically I'm only an 11-year-old adult, okay? Because I count from the time that I was 24, okay? I became an adult at 24. That 20 to 24, you're exploring, you're fresh out of your mom's house. Maybe you went to college, maybe you didn't, but you are trying to figure out who you are outside of your parents' governance, right? So 24, I'm now 35, so I'm an 11-year-old adult. Of those 11 years that I have been an adult, I have chosen entrepreneurship for 10 of those years, okay? So while trying to learn myself, earn for myself, raise a family, I did get married at 20. I then decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And this is where we are 10 years later. Now, 10 years as an entrepreneur, I spent the first 6 as a mobile program. The last 4 have been a brick and mortar. So any of the frustrations that I face as an owner of a brick and mortar, I have to actually peel back those layers and remind myself, I'm only 4 years old. So of course, I don't have it all figured out yet. Of course, I'm going to make mistakes. Of course, because technically, I'm only 4 years old at this.
I hope my husband's listening to this right now. I know I needed to hear it, and I know he definitely needed to hear it. I just wrote down so many little quips that you were saying. And you were mentioning the very beginning about development. And 11 is so awful. I love my children. 11 is so awful. You're an 11-year-old business. You're in puberty.
Right.
What?
Right. And my Mason is 11 too. So
yes,
my oldest is now 11. When I started this, he was a year old when it was officially incorporated, but of course it started when he was 8 weeks old, but then filing and all that stuff. So my business and him are almost like Chinese twins or whatever, right? And he is 11. And one of the conversations that we continue to have is, you're not who I thought you would be at 11. As people have different experiences throughout their lives, they tend to evolve based on their perspective or perception of that experience that they're having. And so I said to Mason, I've noticed you having your own evolution based on the experiences that you're having. For example, at 10, he got his ears pierced. Okay. Only one side. And he loved it. He thought it was cool. He asked for it for years and years and years. And finally, I said, you know what? If that's what you want to do, we're just going to go ahead and do it. He had that in for maybe 6 months before my family members started, giving their opinions about it. He goes to school, he gets opinions about it, and they're not favorable, right? So he, at some point, decides that he wants to take the earring out, but he doesn't tell mommy. He doesn't say, Mom, I'm going to take my earring out because people are talking about me. I'm going to take my earring out because I don't like it anymore. I thought I wanted it, but I don't want it. When I realized that he took his earring out, I said, hey, your earring must have fell out. Your hole's probably closed. You want to get it re-pierced. He was like, no, Mommy, I took it out. Took it out. Why? Well, because people were making fun of me. I was like, wait. We don't do that. We don't cower down to other people's opinions of us. But at 11, you do. The peer pressure. And so I was sharing with Mason that that's an evolution that I've seen in you, that before you wouldn't care what other people thought. But now you do. The other changes that I've seen in him is that he's not as kind as he used to be. Right. And it's not to say that because he's in a season at 11 where he's exploring and he's in puberty and he's got all this peer pressure around him, it's not to say that he won't return to the seeds that were planted from birth to age 5. But for right now, he's in puberty. And so is my business.
Oh, my God. This is such an analogy, right? Like, you get to that point in the beginning, you're like, no, this is me, this is me, this is me, I'm doing it my way. And then you start letting all the stuff that people constantly say and trickle in and the outside voices. And oh, my God.
Yeah. And so with Marvelous Minds being 11, so the pandemic set us on a course service-wise to do what we've always wanted to do, which is non-traditional care. I've never been one to want to follow the status quo. I've always wanted to do things differently. That's just me. Like the way that my hair is now, I've been exploring that since 10th grade, primarily for the same reasons. Like I just didn't want to look like everybody else. And so the pandemic had set us on a course that we've always wanted to be on, was service-wise. But in order to be able to do that, we had to go after certain funding, certain grants. And in order to meet those grants, we had to have certain criteria. We had to meet certain criteria. But when
those criteria have to be able to be seen and judged by other people. So they almost have to fall into a line of something that already exists, but you're trying to do something that doesn't exist.
Yes. So we got through the pandemic doing everything that we could. But that post-pandemic that we're in right now set us on a course to do more traditional care that we want to do, but we don't want to do. Does that make sense?
Right.
Right. We want to be able to serve families, all families. It doesn't matter what kind of economic status you have or don't have. It doesn't matter if you need full-time care or part-time care. We just want to be able to give children a safe place to play and explore who they are. But we can't do what I've learned in the last 11 years is A, we can't do it for free. B, we can't please everybody. And C, even in puberty, you're more supported than you realize. We recently sent out a cry for help on social media. And it is a very real cry for help. But before I was able to verbalize that cry for help, I actually had been chewing on it for over a year, probably 2. Feeling like an 11-year-old kid. I know my parents love me. I know that I have a friend, but why don't these people buy in? Why don't those people want what we're offering? Why, right? So it feels a lot like that right now. Yeah, it feels a lot like that.
That could not be more clear, honestly.
I have chills like everywhere. Like I'm so tingly right now. You're going to make me cry and I'm not the crier.
We can all cry together today.
Yep. So that's how it feels.
And it's such a true feeling. And you know, from like the outside looking in, what you would tell yourself and what the truth is, but it doesn't make the feeling not valid. It doesn't make the feeling not exist.
Mm-mm. And I'm glad you brought up feelings, because this is something else that has been disproven. Your feelings, at least for me, my feelings inform me about me.
Right.
My feelings also lie to me, because since putting out that cry for help, the number of parents who have utilized Marvelous Minds, whether it was one time, whether it was for 1 year, whether they still are engaged or not, came to me and said, we had no idea. We had no idea that you needed help in the capacity in which you asked for it, which I asked for it. And that to me let me know that all those feelings of you weren't doing enough, or people have moved on because they haven't revisited, those are all lies.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that we stopped communicating because you no longer needed the service, or I thought we stopped communicating because you found another alternative. And maybe that's true, but it still doesn't mean that I don't like you. It doesn't mean that I don't want to support you.
Right.
So then that made me realize, my feelings of loneliness were lying to me. It made me realize that feeling that people won't help if you tell them you need help, because I had this belief that nobody wants to help the damsel in distress, right? Everybody wants to be a part of the winning team. Nobody wants to be a part of the underdogs, and the community that has been curated through Marvelous Minds is showing me that that's not true.
Right.
And I need that. And I think a lot of humans, whether you're an entrepreneur or a lifelong learner like me, you need opportunities for recognition and acceptance and support ongoing. And it doesn't always look like an award. It doesn't always look like financial support. Sometimes it really is just somebody saying, no, I still believe in you. Like, I haven't talked to you in 3 years, but I just need you to know that I never stopped watching you on social media, because
Right.
I've been waiting for you to win. And I'm sorry that I stood on the sidelines for this long, not realizing you needed help. But the reason why people didn't realize that Marvelous Mind Academy needed help is because I made it look good.
Right.
I do a great job with wanting to deliver on excellence. And so a lot of times I won't push things to social media. I won't do marketing on any of our programs if I don't feel like it's in alignment with our values, if I don't feel like it's quality, that we can put this forward with quality, I won't market it. But now that we've gotten past the cry for help, it is really reaffirming to see how much people are saying, oh my God, yes, I'll take 50 bookmarks. I would love, hey, I'm doing this event. I would love to pass those out. Hey, can I just give these to my classroom or to my students? Like, yes, of course. Like, I didn't even realize, but it would have never happened if I didn't have our values aligned, if I wasn't courageous enough to ask for help, if I didn't know exactly what kind of help to ask for. But all these things had to be learned over the last 10 years. I had to learn all that.
So tell us what you're doing, Rosa.
So what is happening now at Marvelous Minds, our pop-up daycare is the bread and butter of everything that we do right now. Pop-up daycare is when we go on site to different organizations when they're having meetings for adults, but those adults have children. So we're still doing that. I feel like we're in a holding pattern outside of pop-up daycare. The drop-in daycare program has not gained enough traction to sustain itself. So our goal with pop-up daycare is to utilize the revenue generated from pop-up to sustain our brick and mortar long enough for us to figure out what it is the community actually wants and needs.
Gotcha.
That's what we're doing in an effort to continue getting our name out there, we've started to print bookmarks that are encouraging, they're value aligned, they're easy to share, and they look great. And so we are using the youth and giving them volunteer hours and workforce development to help generate the awareness that Marvelous Mind Academy so needs. And it's not just that we need the awareness. We know that there's way too many families in need of a childcare option for us to fold. And that's really where we are. We're in that tenacious, hopeful phase of the business. And I can't stress enough, what's keeping Marvelous Mind Academy afloat right now is honestly these young people who, when they heard the cry for help, I'm talking about 14-year-old girls who have come through the door at Marvelous Minds and have found a space that is so them. And they're like, no. There's no way we're not going to have Marvelous Minds anymore. And I think that's so cool and creative and totally unexpected, because anything that I've ever intentionally put forth has been geared towards children birth to age 5. So to see how what I've created, 14-year-olds have gravitated towards and appreciated, it makes me feel like you can't quit. You can't stop. And not just the young generation coming to me and saying, there's no way we're going to let these doors close. We're willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with you. We're willing to give up our free time as a young person to come in and help you cut and laminate and distribute bookmarks. I have elders in the community who are taking their time out to simply come in and speak to me about grit, about tenacity, about, yeah, you're 35 and you've been doing this for 10 years and you're tired, but baby, I'm 70, honey. And I've been an activist all my life. Like, we get tired, but we don't stop. And just having this intergenerational connection, it's mind boggling to me. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I wish I could say right now that we are in such a great financial position that we're going to blow this year out of the water. But I can't confidently say that. But what I can confidently say is that with or without a brick and mortar, Marvelous Mind Academy is going to continue to do and fulfill its mission of ensuring that childcare is not a barrier for parents. And however that looks, we're open to it.
So 2 things. You made me cry.
Yep. And I don't know if you could see, I've got like grit written down like 3 times on my paper before you even said that.
And no one, I know you, I don't know you well. I know you, I don't feel like I need to tell you how to have grit. Like you have it. Mm-hmm. But the thing that just stuck out is when you just said about the 70-year-old activist. I've always thought of you as a forerunner, like a front runner and a change maker and a person that's going to get shit done. And I don't know why I've never thought of you as an activist, but the action of changing the way the world looks at what families need for support and how to best give them those needs, and how the way the system is set up is not to reach those needs, right? You've been on that and trying to change it within the boundaries that are very strict and set in their ways in the way childcare is addressed. But I am now changing my view of you from everything I've ever thought of you over the past, I don't even know how many years, to activist. Rosa Marie, activist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, right? Like, it's so crazy because I didn't see myself as an activist either until an elder said, you're an activist. Like, that's how she introed me on the radio show. And I was just like, I'm an activist? I am a childcare activist. Like, whatever barriers are set up against parents, whether it's to go to work, whether it's parental mental health, like that, no matter what service we've ever provided, that has been the catalyst for Marvelous Mind Academy, right? Like, it is what it is. And what I've learned since becoming a brick and mortar, I've learned more about the systems in place and why, as a mobile childcare service, we weren't tapped in. And now, as a brick and mortar childcare service, we are tapped in. And now I'm getting to see the internal nuances within the childcare system. For example, let me share something with you. There are, and I didn't know this before, but there are, I want to say 3 different sectors within OCFS. 2 of them relate to DSS. One of them relates to the oversight of all of these childcare related programming, right? So within DSS, there are 2 split systems. There's the foster care system, DSS, and then there's the custodial parent, DSS, okay? Mind-boggling, as a provider, we have tried to work with families on DSS. When we put our facility ID and our vendor number on a parent's DSS form, we get denied, okay? We are not qualified to care for that family's child. So when we got our first call from CPS for intake, I took my time and I explained to them, this is who we are. This is how we operate. Are you sure that we qualify to support this child? Oh, yes. No, this child is coming from foster care. And so within the foster care funding, they can get as creative as they want to be to make sure that that child has a place to go, which I found ironic that they don't get as creative for parents who still have the custodial rights of their children and are trying, and they're putting out their own personal cries for help. And the system says, I'm sorry, we can't help you, or we can't help you in that way. But if you release your children to us, we can get as creative as we want with how they're cared for.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, it's so backwards.
And it is.
So you're gonna run for office with me?
No.
We're just gonna have we're gonna have a group run together.
I don't believe that. After my experience working outside of the system creatively and working within the system creatively, even before this experience, I used to have a tagline and a phrase that said, the only way up is out. And the longer that I've worked with this, now that I've worked with inside of the system, that thought holds truer now than it ever did before. Mm-hmm. That the 100%. Only way up is out. And that people truly do have the power to make the change. When we, and I'll do it from a price point perspective, because this is blowing my mind too, is we charge $75 for 3 hours, okay, for drop-in daycare. For pop-up daycare, we start at $525, and that's just to go on site, okay? Then I'm gonna marry these 2 ideas. During our cry for help, we were inspired to create these bookmarks that I've been talking about. You can get a physical hard copy bookmark free of charge. But if you want to support the mission and support the cause, then you download the PDF file from the website for $5. And you can cut and laminate your own bookmarks. There have been more people downloading a $5 link than people signing up for drop-in daycare and leaving notes saying women supporting women, leaving notes saying to help a family in need. And just those little gestures, man, it's powerful. You think that in order to make a change, I need a $50,000 grant. In order to make a change, I need a $2 million loan. In order to make a change, but if you look at economics and you understand that there are more people in the world that can afford $5 than the people in the world that can afford $2,500, and you rally them around a mission, that $5 will make all the difference that's needed in the lives of the children and families we're looking to serve.
It's because you're an activist. So as somebody who's used your services, I've used your services on a business model. I've used your services as a parent. I see what you offer. I see how it changes what's out there. I see how I can have staff meetings and everyone can come and know that their kids, no matter their kids' needs, because what you haven't shared is that you and your team are very capable to work with all children. We have seen it personally on lots of different levels. And I have never seen you have a child that couldn't get what it needed. I've seen only happy children. And I'm like, wow, you got that kid happy? Like, oh. And my kids personally are so pissed that they're like back in school. They're like, well, what about Marvelous Minds? I'm like, you don't need to go to Marvelous Minds. Because we used you a lot during that whole like homeschooling and virtual schooling and transition period where like I still had to work and like I have meetings. There's certain things I could take my kids to work with me. There's certain things I can't. But now looking at you as an activist, it doesn't surprise me that people are banding together because it's women that this affects more than anything. Yes, there are men that are taking care of the families and need the help, but more often than not, this is a women forward issue. And even as a business owner that doesn't have children, Kelly has to take care of her employees' children more than she should just to get the work done.
I've one next to me right now.
No way.
You're okay.
Perfect.
We're just talking about you.
I mean, could that be any more perfect? Neither of us even knew this. Like, we're both like, wait a second, what?
Yeah.
But this is a women forward issue. And nothing against your husband, Kelly, but he doesn't take the employees' kids.
No.
It's still a women forward issue and you don't even have kids. Like, how fucked up is this? And that's why what you're doing is so important.
Thank you.
And that's why so many people are responding to your cry for help because they may not need your services right now for whatever reason, but they know how important your services are.
Yeah. Bottle all that up, figure out a way, just as you've done with your creative math, to bottle all those comments and those feelings because it's an incredible thing that you have going. And, I think I want to just touch base back on what you were talking about before and like those feelings. And we used to do this thing in my old life, in my old job, when talking about anxiety and then all of those feelings start coming, like the only thing you have to listen to is that there's something to listen to because everything else is false. Like there's no way to make, you can't rationalize what those feelings are actually saying because it's all nonsense. So when you feel those anxiety in those moments, it's something needs to be paid attention to. And then don't listen to anything else it tells you because it's all lies.
That's right.
Rosa, you're amazing. Thank you for talking with us today. We were like, oh, we're going to do like a short catch up with Rosa. I feel like we could talk for another hour. And just the politics alone of like the things that keep you from being able to do what you do, we haven't even touched base on, but I think we do talk about it in your full length original interview. We love you. And we want to share some bookmarks. So how can people share?
Okay, so you go to marvelousminds.com and you click on the little shop button and you download the link for $5.
I love it.
Love it. Absolutely. You're an inspiration. I know. Keep fighting the fight. There's nobody doing it. You are definitely an activist, but you're incredibly unique in what you're doing. And hopefully if people are out there listening from other areas and you feel like you need to learn more, reach out to Rosa, because I know that's one thing you'll always do is tell people how to do it and share your story and how we can make this happen in other communities because it's so important.
Absolutely. Alternative
childcare. You know what? And one more thing. I want to stop the line of alternative childcare. I want alternative childcare to be normal childcare. It's not alternative. It's childcare.
Yeah. So our thing is always childcare reimagined. Like, how can we flip the system on its head? How can we do things differently? How can we I've always believed that childcare should be safe, reliable, and as accessible as any corner store. So how do we get that? How do we do that?
All right, Rosa, we will catch up with you again in a few months and see how things are going.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.